Looking for a great place to find a wide selection of clothes, rockabilly, steampunk, corsets, goth, and all the accessories to go with it? Check out Subculture Corsets at the Avenues Mall in Jacksonville, Florida. Or check out their website at subculturecorsets.com. And if you enter the code Cosmic Shenanigans, you'll save 10% at checkout. See you there.
Welcome to Shenanigans Ensue with
Mary SanGiovanni!
Folks, welcome to Cosmic Shenanigans. I'm Mary SanGiovanni, up to shenanigans once again of cosmic proportions. Today, we'll be talking about Welsh writer, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Arthur Machen. I have been reliably informed that it is either Machen or Machen, but to make my life simple, I'm going to call him Arthur Machen because that seems to be the majority vote. So anyway, I digress. Arthur Machen's novella, The Great God Pan. That's what we're going to be talking about today. A version of it was published in the magazine The Whirlwind in 1890. Then he revised and extended it for its book publication, together with another story, The Inmost Light, in 1894. Now, apparently it was widely panned as being degenerate, horrific, and sexually explicit. So, of course, how could it not be good? Many of the things that I like are generally widely panned when they first come out. Amusingly, though, if you have ever actually read the story, most of that sexually explicit material is never actually described. It's only hinted at and suggested by things like unfinished sentences and thoughts, passages in writings that characters suddenly turn away from, etc. It is a testament to the author's skill that so much was read in between the lines of what the man actually wrote. In the essay Supernatural Horror in Literature, H.P. Lovecraft said, "No one could begin to describe the cumulative suspense and ultimate horror with which every paragraph abounds." This is in reference to The Great God Pan. "And that the sensitive reader reaches the end with an appreciative shudder." Scholars state that Lovecraft's The Dunwich Horror is heavily influenced by The Great God Pan, particularly in inclusion of a half-alien, otherworldly hybrid. It even makes specific reference to the novella in the Dunwich Horror story. It has also inspired Clark Ashton Smith's The Nameless Offspring of 1933, Peter Straub's Ghost Story, and Stephen King's N, which is one of my favorites from his collection Just After Sunset from 2008. Now, this novella is a quintessential tale of cosmic horror, at its core, professing proof in a world beyond ours, a world of shape-shifting entities, shadows, and powerful spirits. Machen himself, fascinated by mysticism and paganism, as well as other facets of the occult, presents not the slavering half-beast cult worshippers or curious and nebbish intellectuals seeking the ultimate power that you often see in Lovecraft tales, but rather the supernatural power of nature. So, I mean, on the offset, it may seem like it's a deviation from Lovecraft's work, Lovecraft being a devout atheist, but there is something sort of close to the heart for me here with The Great God Pan, because this story calls to mind the otherworld, which is so prevalent in Irish, Welsh, and English folklore. It's a land of the fairy folk and the forest folk, of elemental spirits protecting ancient, dark, and tucked away places. But these entities aren't always good. They're not good or evil, really. They're entities of mercurial temper and temperament, who might just as easily curse a man to suicide, starvation, and ruin for some perceived slight as not. And in keeping with cosmic horror themes, that indifference to human welfare, that helplessness of the human race in the face of a more powerful otherworldly force, is not too unlike the elder gods of Lovecraft's work. Much like the Call of Cthulhu in structure, there is a continued pursuit of answers by the main characters in spite of recognized dangers, an epistolary approach where much of the story's revelations are manuscripts and letters within others. Unlike Lovecraft, as I mentioned, who often eschewed the occult, at least in fiction, in reality it's generally held that he had no belief in it whatsoever. Machen actually embraced paganism and mysticism in his personal life, and it found its way into his fiction as any influential force does a writer. And I got this from Wikipedia. I'm sorry. Usually I try to get, more than one source. But his Wikipedia page for Machen says, from the beginning of his literary career, Machen espoused a mystical belief that the humdrum ordinary world hid a more mysterious and strange world beyond. His Gothic and decadent works of the 1890s concluded that the lifting of this veil could lead to madness, sex, or death, and usually a combination of all three. Machen's later works became somewhat less obviously full of Gothic trappings, but for him, investigations into mysteries invariably resulted in life-changing transformation and sacrifice. Machen loved the medieval worldview because he felt it manifested deep spirituality alongside a rambunctious earthiness. Machen was a great enthusiast for literature that expressed the rapture, beauty, adoration, wonder, awe, mystery, sense of the unknown, desire for the unknown, that he summed up in the word ecstasy, end quote. So essentially we have two different writers coming at cosmic horror from two very vastly different personalities, very vastly different worldviews, and if you think about it, vastly different other worldviews. Now, Machen was raised as a Christian, and over the course of his life, he managed to reconcile his Christian beliefs with his mysticism, Celtic Christianity, which is in and of itself a sort of reconciling of Christianity and pagan views, and readings of literature and legend. His stories do not show such a reconciliation, though, which I find interesting. As a horror tale, this makes sense. I mean, he's writing horror, but a deeper inspection reveals some interesting notions. I think it's interesting that upon first reading, it would seem he vilifies a thing he finds so awe-inspiring, this power of nature, the almost supernatural power of nature. That he would, as the quote suggests, promote the notion that lifting the veil, which in the novella he calls seeing the god Pan, that lifting this veil would lead to madness, sex, or death. He creates a creature who mesmerizes men with her beauty and charm, but at the same time repulses them with her expressions, and, it is suggested, with glimpses of that other world. He sets up as heroes men whose moral compass is supposedly not to be swayed by the experiences of a wider, more diverse London, but whose involvement in the events of the story is not really shown in the most positive light. Even their solution to the problem of this creature is a kind of inaction rather than an action. And there is in this novella, as I understand there was in much of Machen's fiction, a distinct difference between the often frivolous and unaccomplished, materialistically wealthy and reputable in high society, which he disdained in real life, versus the, quote, naked, for a lack of a better way to say it, and timeless freedom and unencumbrance of the other world. It is the poor, the denizens of London's underside, really, the country rurals who come close to and are sometimes damaged by the creatures of the other world, but ultimately it's the rich and powerful who are destroyed by them. In true cosmic horror fashion, a deeper look at these forces shows them to believe themselves superior and thus somewhat indifferent to humans. Honestly, this is no different a way of interacting with humanity than anything else in nature. I mean, if you think about storms aren't evil, even if they kill a lot of people. They're just really essentially indifferent. So are most predators. It's also interesting to note that Lovecraft refined his own indifferent and otherworldly gods to conform more in line over time with science and nature, albeit the mysterious and unknown parts of it in his later work, but perhaps for the same reason, that the source of great mystery, terror, and awe that is most accessible to the human experience is that possibly very natural, supernatural force, which is, in itself, a force of nature. Further, there are many real-life, quote, stories about interactions with supernatural things, which are also not necessarily good or evil. They simply are. And I think that's an important connection to cosmic horror, that what we're perceiving as evil is really imbalance as far as we perceive it. Not so much as far as what it really is, which is indifference. Okay? Further, the superiority complex is just as, ironically, it's just as strong in the human characters of the story, particularly in the supposed good guys. They often come across as dismissive, for one thing. One of the main characters is fairly dismissive of beggars, for example, until the true identity of this particular beggar is revealed. They are often incredibly condescending, for example, Dr. Raymond, and having arrived at success and security in life because of inheritance and who one knows. Several of the people that we are supposed to feel sorry for as victims are, I guess, their qualities, their virtues, exist for no other reason than they were either born into them or death allowed them to profit by it. And these are people who are known for, say, having great dinners, throwing a great party. Right? None of it necessarily corresponds to any significant moral attributes. Now, none of these things are inherently evil either, okay? But it does not speak well of humanity that in the face of temptations to perform evil acts or participate in degenerate activities, nowhere does it state that these people were, in fact, influenced by the supernatural forces until after they have been corrupted, as it is said. Quote, they corrupt themselves. This is my positing my theory about these stories, is that the true horror really is that they've corrupted themselves. Essentially, they have allowed a, quote, trifling rearrangement of morals, a moment's decision to give in or to choose evil, to open a door and allow the most thrilling and terrifying things in. They are given the ability to see the god Pan essentially without surgery. And the implication is that, like Mary, they enter it willingly. But unlike Mary, they understand what they're doing and what's coming. They're going to see the god Pan with eyes open, so to speak. I would even go so far, not that I'm all about human bashing, but I'd even go so far as to put forth that the true evil in the story is one of the humans, Dr. Raymond. Now, I feel I should explain this in some detail here. Dr. Raymond's arrogance is in full force from the beginning of the story, almost noxiously so. And his belief that his ward Mary's life is his, quote, to do with as he sees fit, end quote, simply because he rescued her from starvation in a gutter. A young woman who clearly cares about him and trusts him, although we're going to come back to the odd nature of that relationship, is frankly terrifying. His obsession to open a doorway he thinks he knows everything about, but in truth understands only superficially, makes him act restlessly and recklessly in surgically allowing Mary to see the god Pan. Now, to me, that's kind of a terrifying concept. All along the way, the characters that we are meant to like much like in Lovecraft stuff, much like in cosmic horror stories in general, these characters are somewhat aware that they're looking for answers. But I think often in Lovecraft's work, the horror is in the discovery of what those answers are. With the great god Pan, I would say the horror is more in that single moment of choice. When Dr. Raymond talks about the surgery that allows people to see the god Pan, he says that it's a simple surgery that 9 out of 10 brain specialists would never even notice it. A simple, trifling rearrangement of cells. I think the terrifying thing is that something so small could erupt in something so incredibly, all-pervasively evil. And what I find interesting, too, is that in a lot of cosmic horror, the monsters are essentially the horror because they mean that the world beyond us is not at all like what we thought. It is completely against everything we have been raised to believe, that it is so foreign and alien and uncaring that the horror is knowing something we can never unknow. The horror in the great god Pan is that what we already know is even more horrible than what we don't know. The fact that it's not something from some far away place, that the other world is an extension in many ways of this world, that the nature of the beast, whether it's a supernatural nature of some shape-shifting monster who is half human and half some other force, or human beings doing ungodly things to other human beings. That's the horror, is that the beauty of nature. In one of the earlier episodes of the show, we had talked a little bit about romanticism and that sort of awe of nature. And I wonder if these differences, and it is unquestionably, the novella is unquestionably a cosmic horror story. There is an element of the outside world. But I think that what is scary about it is that Machen is saying it's not as far away or as outside or alien as you think. As opposed to Lovecraft saying, oh my god, it is so incredibly alien and so not what we ever thought was possible that that's scary. So I think it's a fascinating change, and I suspect that that has a lot to do with the difference between belief in this stuff on a fundamental level and not believing it. I think in one case it's a fear of what if all the things I don't believe are true, and the other one is what if all the things I do believe are true. Either way, I think it can be kind of scary. Now I do have a couple of ads. This is going to be sort of a short show today because for probably the longest story we've tackled here, I feel that we've kind of covered everything significant about covering it. I do have an ad, though, that I would like to read. I'm very excited. This is our first time with these folks advertising, because since we are talking about wonders of nature, do you want to be soft? Do you want to be beach ready? As I'm reading this, I'm looking across. I don't have Dave here engineering for me today. I have Brian. And
what up, everybody?
I'm pretty sure he wants to be soft and beach ready and cosmically nice smelling.
I do.
I figured you might. If that's the case, then you need Bahama Jane's Beach Feet Sand Soap. First of all, and this is kind of awesome. I really sort of want this myself. It comes in coconut, peppermint, and naked. Since we were talking about naked, which is actually no scent. There's no eldritch scentiness or Stygian depths yet, but I'm sure they're working on it. It will keep your feet beach ready all year long, so the deep ones will appreciate it when you go wading out into the water. Half a cup of sand is in every bar of soap, so that's good for exfoliation. It removes calluses naturally. It reduces and removes dead skin, so you don't look like a Shabbath. It's basically a pedicure in a bar. And it's great for stimulating your feet. It sounds delightful. And what I really like about it, and what I feel that ties into our discussion on nature and all of its awesome power, is that Bahama Jane's is a small handcrafted natural body product company that believes in promoting natural health and well-being through the use of the purest products available. They only buy ingredients from companies that do not commission tests on animals, and they only test their products on family and friends, as any great nature company should do. Bahama Jane's believes it's okay to make time for yourself, and pampering is needed to keep you healthy, physically and emotionally. They believe a scent can bring you to your happy place as much as a warm breeze on the beach, or the crisp mountain air can fill your mind, body, and soul with pleasure. Bahama Jane's believes that life is a journey and that you should take all of its awards and failures as moments to reflect. They believe in making people happy and giving back. If you want to check this out, go to bahamajanes.com. That's BAHAMAJANES.com. I think it's delightful because I know that this is probably one of the first times where we've sort of veered off into a lot of what the author's personal beliefs are and how it affects the story. But that's kind of the point, is that it really does affect the story. And I think in looking at cosmic horror stories in the future, one of the things that is going to be an important element to recognize is that cosmic horror does grow and change. It is not a subgenre like that I suspect many people feel is sort of stagnated because, of stilted language or stilted concepts. Despite the unpleasant views that Lovecraft had, and the views about the cosmos and the supernatural, which I tend to disagree with as much as his unpleasant views, I do think that it is important, and I've had this conversation with people, that it's absolutely crucial to his work that he felt those things, that they're enjoyable stories in spite of them, but that they exist because of them. And I think that this, being that this is a subject close to my heart anyway, the idea of paganism and the power of nature and its indifference, really, I know it factors into a lot of things that I write, particularly in a story like, say, Savage Woods, one of my recent novels from Kensington. This idea that nature's not out to get you, but it's not out to protect you either. It's there, and it's doing its thing to survive just like you are. And there is a kind of horror, if you think about it, from the ways that the characters in Machen's work do. And I wonder if maybe that was on purpose, that he made them these kind of sheltered people, these sort of sheltered, self-centered people, that they find it horrific that this force is tearing through them, because it seems unbalanced and unfair. And when it really is, as I mentioned, just utterly indifferent. So that is The Great God Pan. Next week, we are going to be talking about Crouch End, one of my favorite short stories from Stephen King of all time, and most definitely a cosmic horror homage, if anything I've ever read. Normally, I would thank Dave Thomas. I continue to thank Dave Thomas because he will continue to engineer for me in the future. He is convalescing right now and probably does not want to bear the brunt of having to dig any kind of car out of the snow. But he's awesome, and if you want to show your appreciation for him, you can check out the @Meteor Notes channel on Twitch, where Dave plays video games and makes snarky commentary. You can, of course, show your appreciation for the one, the only Brian Keene by listening to The Horror Show with Brian Keene, on which Dave and I are also fairly commonly present. You can hear me, Dave, and Brian talking about everything related to horror. The business of horror, the fun of horror, the gossip of horror, the news of horror, the joy of horror. If you'd like to advertise on Cosmic Shenanigans, you can send an email to Armand Rosamilia at ARMANDROS amila@gmail.com. I wish Armand had a shorter name. And if you want to check out more stuff about horror and the occult, I believe an article of mine is coming out on Apex, their online aspect of their publication. I have an article on Lovecraft and black magic and the occult, which should be posted, I believe he said March, so sometime this month it should be up if you are curious. And otherwise, you can check out Cosmic Shenanigans on Project Entertainment Network, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, and all other platforms. And as it's been pointed out to me, and I didn't really realize this, it would be a huge help if, regardless of the platform that you listen to the podcast on, if you could leave us a review at iTunes. My understanding is that it benefits us when it comes to advertising and all kinds of other good stuff. So if you could do that, absolutely please do. And if you have any suggestions about things you'd like me to look into and discuss on Cosmic Shenanigans, then please, you can email me or send me a message on Facebook, on the Cosmic Shenanigans Facebook page, and let me know. And we will have more shenanigans in the future. Okay? Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Scribbler's Rest. Do you pop D20s like candy? Do you bleed D6s? Then Scribbler's Rest is your fix. Do some time with a crew of authors, artists, and other nefarious types. We have a case of dews in the fridge, and plenty of magic missiles to unload into your darkness. Slide us in your ear hole and let us work our magic. Feel our vibes every Thursday on the Project Entertainment Network.